What I find most inspiring right now, 35 years in to the movement, is not necessarily what's going on in this sort of traditional forms, the original four elements, the DJing, the breaking, the MCing. Those things, there are still inspirational work being done. There's still good political and grassroots organizing coming out of those forms. But what I see as most inspiring at this point is the second generation forms: hip-hop literature, poetry, theater, spoken word, hip-hop academia, and hip-hop activism. And I think these are all crucial. And if you look at the enormous acceleration of hip-hop's acceptance and embrace by the mainstream, it's actually remarkable. 35 years in, there's hardly a major American university that does not have one hip-hop course, if not 5 hip-hop courses. If hip-hop was jazz, we'd be in like 1935. We'd be in the swing era. We wouldn't have gotten to Charlie Parker yet. We wouldn't have bebop yet. Coltrane and Monk wouldn't be playing together at the 5 spot for another 20 years. Miles Davis' Bitches Brew would be a distant spark in the future. So the ways in which hip-hop has made these inroads is actually remarkable, and I think that to reclaim it, although I think celebrity endorsements of issues are important, I think policy work is crucial, it's also, I think, equally important to get away from the notion of a culture of celebrity and look more at how we reconnect folks who are 12, who are 15, with the basic conception that hip-hop was born of struggle, that hip-hop was oppositional, that it was speaking truth to power, not that folks went out to create revolution. As Herc was saying, he was trying to throw a party and have a good time. But those acts were inherently political and inherently audacious and poetic and brilliant. The genius of graffiti writers engaging the city of New York in a war over the course of 15 years, 73 to 88, the city of New York spent $250 million trying to combat subway graffiti. And they still couldn't do it. The genius with which these kids mapped out the urban subterranean, avoided cops, third rails, dogs, everything the city could throw at them. And it was thrown at them not because graffiti disrupted the trains, but because it was a class and comfort issue for middle-class strap hangers coming in from Jersey and Long Island. They were made uncomfortable by this conversation going on public property that they couldn't read or comprehend. The genius of plugging into the electricity available in the parks. People who had no power literally taking power back to the city in the form of raw electricity. These are genius moments. These are audacious and brilliant. And kids today have no reason, through the consumption and commodification of hip-hop that they experience daily, with no effort on their part because it's beamed right to them, there's no way that a 12-year-old, unless he or she has been educated by someone older than them who remembers a different time and a different energy and a different spirit, they're not going to understand that hip-hop is or was or could be a social movement. So as hip-hop makes enormous inroads into education, as it becomes popular culture on not just a national but a global level for youth, more important than perhaps anything else to me is just simply making that reconnection to what it really is and could be about. That spirit is essential. No matter how hip-hop is transmogrified and how it evolves, that essential kernel is the most inspiring thing about it. And kids have no connection to it. When I go to high school classes, I talk to kids, I'll play a video and I'll say, boom, let me pause this video right at the end and say, what do you think happens 5 minutes after this video shoot wraps? They look at me like, huh? And I'm like, well, the bucket man comes around. They're like, the bucket man? Who's the bucket man? I'm like, the bucket man. The dude with the bucket who comes around and everybody takes off their chain and puts it in the bucket. Everybody takes out the car keys to the rented Bentley drop top and puts it in the bucket, and all that shit goes back to where it was rented from. It's such a funhouse mirror at this point. How many times did 50 Cent get shot? How many times 50 Cent visited his aunt who's sick in the hospital? Who knows, right? We have no conception of him beyond the marketed Teflon image. Clearly there's a real man there, there's an artist there. The notion of Kanye getting up with his 5 seconds before he got censored, and that didn't even make it to the West Coast because they already cut him off when he said George Bush doesn't care about black people. On one hand, it's inspiring. On the other hand, I'm having a flashback to the '68 Olympics or the Oscars when Michael Moore stands up. And I'm saying, damn, we're still at a point where we have to edge in our political commentary in the 15 seconds we have before the censorship kicks in. And the reason I mentioned 50 Cent in that context is because after Kanye said what he said, 50 Cent took it upon himself to get up and defend George Bush and say, that's not true. Well, you know, if George Bush does care about any black people, they'd certainly be black people in 50 Cent's tax bracket, so he may have some kind of a point there. But getting back to that essential root element that inspired hip-hop, that inflamed the people involved in it and took it from a local, organic, Bronx-based art form to something that has had power globally, regardless of language, these concepts and notions of community have transcended all of that. And at this point, the understanding is clearer abroad, largely, than it is here. Some of these notions of resistance are more clear in Brazil, in South Africa, even in Japan, than they are to your average grassroots 14-year-old hip-hop listener. So to me, to really energize hip-hop politically, we have to return to that. Thank you.
And I wanted to speak back on a slight